Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And wouldn't you know it, the day I leave to go on my vacation for the summer, Wargaming goes ahead and releases one of the most cracked out, insane devblogs regarding a couple of ships that they must have been on the most goodest of goods when developing these ships. I would say this ship, because there's one that stands out in particular, but all the ships in this devblog are pretty much just like, whoa, man. They are pretty nice. You've probably seen a couple of other coverages of this. I am late, but I still want to talk about it and give you guys my 2 cents on these ships. So let's go ahead and get started. Link to this is in the comments down below. If you haven't checked out this devblog yet, I highly encourage you to do so, because a lot of these ships are just, well, all these ships are absolutely just cracked at the moment. Okay, so it states, new ships, closed testing 11.6, German battleship Anhalt, Spanish destroyer Alvaro de Bazan, European super destroyer Dalarana, and Japanese submarine I-56 have been added to the game for testing. So starting out with the German battleship, the Anhalt, the Tier 8, and this is a premium ship from the icon. A battleship with an original layout, armed with 15 350mm main caliber guns and 5 3-gun turrets. These relatively small caliber guns are compensated by their high salvo weight and their high armor penetration of high explosive shells, and the ship is well protected against both HE and SAP shells. However, her citadel is quite vulnerable to enemy shells compared to the typical armor scheme of German battleships. In close combat, Anhalt can surprise the enemy with her powerful 700mm torpedoes mounted in 4 single-tube torpedo tubes. At the same time, unlike most German battleships, she has no hydroacoustic search. That's interesting, because the Mecklenburg was released about a week or so ago, and I recently got her with the coupon reset, and that too is another higher tier German battleship that doesn't have hydroacoustic search. That's a pretty normal staple of the German battleship tech tree and the premium ships, and now we're getting 2 of these back to back that don't have that consumable. So talking like that's the most insane thing about this ship. 15 guns and 5 3-gun turrets. Now, the only image we have of her right now is the one given to us in the devblog, and we can see that, yeah, it's basically just a gun barge. You've got the 2 in the front, then you have the Zeton Star Destroyer type superstructure there, and then you've got 3 turrets in the back, and I can't really pick out in this image where the torpedo tubes are. They're probably tucked somewhere, I would imagine, in between the superstructure. They might have the whole launch torpedoes like the British battle cruisers are getting, and they might be able to adjust their fire after being launched like that, but or I could just be blind and they could be looking me right in the face and I just don't see them. This ship is nuts. This ship is, starting off this devblog, this ship is, 15 guns. Now, 350mm guns at Tier 8. That's 13.7 inches. So you have almost 14-inch guns at Tier 8, which isn't terribly small for Tier 8. By Tier 8, 15, 16 inches is kind of the norm, but definitely on the smaller side. But you do make up for that with 15 guns. And, God, this thing, I'm really interested to see what the armor scheme exactly is on this ship. They said it's not like the traditional German battleship armor scheme, so I'm assuming no turtleback. Probably more of like maybe American battleship type, but we shall see moving forward with that. Okay, and things just get kookier from here. Spanish destroyer Alvero de Bazan, Tier 10. I'm probably murdering that, and this looks like it's going to be a freemium ship. So, they say, a high-speed destroyer leader with powerful artillery armament. The destroyer is similar to the Italian Capitani Romani type ships. The main feature of the Alvaro de Bazan is the 8 135mm main caliber guns with HE and high-powered AP shells, as well as the ability to use the alternative fire mode, burst fire, previously available only to some super ships. Thanks to her fast 40-knot speed, she can rapidly attack enemy ships and deal heavy damage in a very short amount of time. Torpedo armament is represented by two tubed torpedo launchers. The torpedoes have good range, but not the highest speed and damage. Consumables are represented by the classic destroyer set of engine boost and smoke generator. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a tier 10 freemium ship that will have the alternative fire mode now. Before, this was tested out on the Canaries, the tier 6 premium Spanish cruiser, and it didn't make it into the game. It was removed. It was, I guess, too difficult to balance for wargaming, and they cut that before it even got into the game. But now we have, pretty interestingly, another Spanish ship set to have the burst fire mode. They don't specify here what exactly it does. I'm going to assume it does a normal, 3-round burst type of deal. But with the Canaries, it would increase the armor penetration of the shells and increase the damage that it does. Will that be so here? Maybe it will state in the detailed stats section when we get to there. I don't know, but at this moment it doesn't really tell us. Now, the Spanish tech tree, you could definitely make a Spanish destroyer tech tree, and this might kind of be a precursor or a test bed to that. And I think it would be pretty cool to see a full-on Spanish tech tree starting out with destroyers, and you could definitely branch out into the cruisers up to around tier 7 or tier 8, and battleships you would have to do tier 1 to maybe 3 or maybe 5 if you stretch it, and then it'd have to be fantasy from there on out. But I think it's interesting that we're getting more, well, not interesting, but I think it's good that we're getting more Spanish ships and more ships from various nations rather than just padding out the lines that we have right now. But burst fire mode on a freemium ship, on a tech line ship, on a tier 10 ship, not a tech line ship, I don't know how well that's going to work. Again, we'll see if they provide more details down below, but yeah, that's the second kookiest thing in this devblog. And then we get to the Dalarana. I'm not exactly sure where this one's supposed to be from, but let's see what they have to say. A versatile destroyer combining powerful artillery and torpedo armament with the most modern AA defense equipment for the 1950s. Great. Dalarana is a classic representation of the European destroyer line, powerful torpedo armament, strong AA defense, no smoke, and a decent caliber for her main guns, which allows the ship to repel the enemy in an artillery duel. The main difference between this ship and its predecessor, Holland, is the additional turret, which gives it one of the best damage per minute of her type. In addition, Dalarana can use two types of torpedoes in combat, the familiar European torpedoes with high speed and low damage, slow and not the most long-range torpedoes with increased damage. The Super Destroyer's consumables are represented by Engine Boost, Repair Party, and DFAA. So, this ship can switch in combat between the normal European torps and slow-moving, high-damage torpedoes. Again, we'll see just how high damage and the stats down below. But, yeah, more super ships, more ships pushing into the 1950s and the 1960s. It wouldn't surprise me, and this ship looks really modern too. It doesn't look quite as modern as the 4 Sherman, of course, but it looks very modern for this game, and it looks massive too in this picture. I know it does have the additional turret up front. It'll be interesting to see what the ship looks like in game compared to the other Hollands, the Holland, and park a Calvados next to it and see how big it is. Alright, and then here's probably the kookiest thing in this devblog, even taking the Anhalt into consideration. Japanese submarine I-56 Tier 8. And this is a premium ship, mind you. Now, before we get talking about the ship, the Japanese, of course, were definitely going to be one of the probably earlier additions into the game in terms of submarines. They had a fairly sizable, well, a very sizable submarine fleet during World War II, so it makes sense that they are getting a tech line of submarines, and I guess they just want to start out with the premium here for some reason. Okay, so it says I-56 belonged to the third and final series of the second modification of the Otsu class submarines, type B Mod 2 I-54 class, which included 3 ships and operated the Imperial Japanese Navy from 1944 to 1945. Otsu was one of the most numerous submarine classes in the Japanese Navy during the Pacific War period. Submarines of this type were fully suited to the conditions of the Pacific theater of war, well-armed, fast-moving, highly autonomous, with a short dive capability, and suitable for a wide variety of combat missions. However, the price of the high-performance characteristics was a large displacement and the cost of the submarine. The main armament of the submarine is composed of 6 torpedo tubes with long-range torpedoes in the bow of the hull, as well as a 140mm main caliber gun with sap shells, under direct player control. The sub has excellent surface maneuverability, but is significantly lower underwater. I'm assuming that's supposed to say slower underwater, and has limited dive capacity. This makes long dives impossible for the I-56. The submarine's combat tactics are similar to those of the Japanese torpedo destroyers, playing on the surface and regularly attacking enemy ships with torpedoes without homing from long range. So yes, we're getting a submarine with a deck gun that the players can control. This, again, isn't too surprising to me. I talked about it beforehand. It was only a matter of time before submarines get introduced that we start seeing ships like this, where we can manually control the deck armaments. Like, I am 100% sure that it wouldn't even surprise me if in like the next DevBlog they announced the Surcouf, the French cruiser submarine with the 8-inch turret with the 2 guns in it, in the next update. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But that being said, I do like the playstyle of this submarine. It's meant to be at the surface. It doesn't have a long dive time. It's meant to use unguided torpedoes as opposed to homing torpedoes, and it does have a deck gun. So it's got a lot going for it that encourages staying at the surface and basically playing it like a DD rather than a submarine like we all know and love right now that just sits underwater, pings you for half the match, and you gotta drop what you're doing to try and dodge the homing torpedoes. So if they can pull this formula off here with the I-56, I think this will be a much better and much healthier option for the game going forward if they are going to continue to introduce submarines into the game, which, let's not kid ourselves, they are going with this idea full bore now. Alright, so let's see the detailed stats of these ships. So, opening up with the Anhalt. So, she has, 5x3 350s, a firing range of 21 kilometers, maximum HE shell damage of 4,000, 88mm of pin, 27% chance of causing a fire. It's roughly the same as the Mecklenburg, and the Mecklenburg's quite a good fire starter, but she has, but she has much better Sigma. The Anhalt only has 1.7 Sigma, and a maximum dispersion of 271 meters, so this is going to be a shotgun, basically. What's the reload time of these shells? Let's see, reload time, 30 seconds. Okay, that kind of makes up for it, though. A 30-second flat reload time with 15 guns, that's pretty nice, actually. And 4x1 700mm torps, with a maximum damage of 20,633. If you guys are wondering, the normal torps that the German battleships get are the 533mm torpedoes that the Tirpitz gets. That's normally what most German battleships have, but this sucker's got 700mm torps. They go 54 knots, they reload in 45 seconds, that's actually not bad. And the launcher 180s in 15 seconds. Secondaries get 6x2, 105, so 1,205mm guns. At tier 8, that's actually not terrible. Those can pin 26mm of armor, so that's not bad. You could build into that with IFHE, but with the 14-inch guns, I wouldn't do that. And then 8x1 of the 150s with a maximum range base of 7.6 kilometers, so you can get them out to, I believe, 11.3, which is pretty good for tier 8. Then you get Damage Con, Repair, Party, Fighter, and Spotter. If you want to, you can swap out the Fighter or the Spotter there. Alright, oh yeah, how fast is this thing before we move on for that? Maximum speed, 25 knots! Oh no! It's a slow battleship, 25 knots! Oh yeah, that's gonna, I'm not sure about this now. I guess we'll see. Maybe you can build into the main battery guns, but 25 knots at tier 8? Well, the Atlantico pulled it off, so maybe the Anhalt can too. Alright, so the Spanish destroyer, the Alvero de Bazan, 26,600 hit points. That's a pretty decent amount for tier 10. 4x2 135s, 11.6 kilometer base range. Reload time of 10 seconds. Okay, and the rapid fire. It reloads in 40 seconds. You get a 2-second interval in between the burst, and it gets 3 shots. So you pop it in this essentially like, I believe, what the Super Caballeros has right now. That's 3-round burst rapid fire. That's what you get here. But again, it's on a tier 10 ship, not a super ship. 2x4 533mm torch, maximum damage of 13,900. That's actually what the Germans normally get on the battleships. 13.5 kilometers, 56 knots. They reload in 95 seconds. Okay, and the Dalarana. This is the European super destroyer. 20,300 hit points. Less hit points than the Bazan here. That's funny. 3x2 120mm guns, firing range of 12.3 kilometers. And they reload in 2 seconds. That's actually pretty nice. And their torpedoes, the first set that you can choose from are the traditional European Torps, 10,700, 15 kilometer range, 86 knot speed. The slower torpedoes do 14,400 damage. They have a 10 kilometer range, and they travel at 70 knots. And they reload in 90 seconds. Both of them reload in 90 seconds. Okay, so that's interesting. You can swap between Torps on the fly on a ship that also has pretty darn good guns on it too. Dang. All right, and then the I-56, 24,200 hit points, 19mm plating, has 120 units of dive capacity. It depletes 1 unit a second, and it recharges 2 units a second on the surface. It's 140 millimeter gun, has a firing range of 8.5 kilometers. It does fire sap, so it does 2,750 maximum sap damage, 39 millimeters a pin, and the sap shell comes out the tubes at 700 meters a second. Reloads in 2.3 seconds, though. That's actually pretty nice. It is only one gun, so I'm not exactly sure if you'll be able to dock it down much. Maybe if a ship's at fairly low health, it'll work, but yeah. It does have 2.0 Sigma, though, and a maximum dispersion of 45 meters, so this gun's going to go where you point it at. And torpedo tubes, you get 6x1 533s. The acoustic torpedoes, so the homing torps, do a maximum damage of 10,600. They have a range of 6 kilometers. They travel at 78 knots and reload in 35 seconds. The normal torpedoes do a maximum damage of 14,300, have a range of 12.5 kilometers, travel at 73 knots, and reload in 35 seconds as well. And this ship goes 27 knots. And does it have its... No, it does not have its submerged speed. Interesting. Alright, so these ships are pretty nutty. The Anhalt, I really don't know how that ship's going to perform when she gets released. It might be another Atlantico. It might be able to work with that 25 knot top speed. And its set of guns at 30-second reload time, I do think it's going to help it out a lot. The Bazan... Again, anytime a nation gets some more representation in a game, that's cool, but I don't think the burst fire mode is really what we need right now. Starting to add those into freemium ships, that's taking an element of the super ships that directly makes them overpowered, and we're going to say, you know, the payoff or the trade-off for playing these overpowered ships is they cost a bunch of credits to run them, but now you're putting them in a freemium ship that by nature is going to cost less credits to run. And yeah, so I don't really see that going. I think you could do away with that, and I think that this Bazan would be just fine. Dalarana looks crazy. I'm sure the European destroyer enjoyers out there are going to love her. Like I said about I-56, some interesting mechanics going on here, and I think if they could pull this one off, that might be the mold for the rest of the submarines in the future, because again, it sounds like it's encouraging you to stay at the surface, use the non-homing torpedoes, play a bit riskier, but again, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think about these ships in the comments down below. Hope you all had a wonderful Wednesday. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. On the way to 40,000 subscribers, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.